All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our post-race coverage of the Talladega Yellawood 500. I guess I should say Yellawood 500 at Talladega. We just had a wild finish, an overtime finish. Not really a massive wreck throughout this race. We did have one with, I believe, 8 cars involved, but we'll get to that. Let's go ahead and dive into our race recap. So starting us off, Michael McDowell won the pole. Chase Briscoe on the outside pole. Chase Briscoe just narrowly missing out on another pole this year. He's basically having a Rocket Man, Ryan Newman type season. Just winning pole after pole after pole. Pretty impressive. But McDowell starting out front. And we had a pretty clean stage one. They got 3 wide, relatively quick. Sometimes 4 wide. And then the field single filed out for just a few laps, and then it got back to 2 and 3 wide. So they were fuel saving throughout stage 1. It was a 60 lap stage. And then on lap 43, around lap 43, that's when green flag pit stop started. And then on lap 43, Chase Briscoe and BJ McLeod both penalized for too fast entering. So we already had 2 penalties just on those on that pit cycle. So that's always something you have to watch for when these guys start pitting on the plate tracks, is can they get on cleanly without wrecking? That'll be something to talk about later. And can they escape without a penalty? Then on the very next lap, lap 44, Kyle Busch was too fast exiting. So not great for Kyle Busch. On lap 47, Ross Chastain also receives a penalty for being too fast on pit road. Not sure whether that was entering or exiting, but he did receive a penalty. And then on lap 49, we had a close call. Our first close call of the race. Well, I should say second. Carson Hocevar had a flat right rear. He was able to, he was towards the back of the pack already, but he was able to get it back to pit road, didn't spin, didn't get into the wall. So good job by Carson Hocevar to catch that. And thank goodness he wasn't towards the front of the field when this happened, or that could have been our big one. But also during this set of green flag pit stops, Denny Hamlin almost murdered Casey Mears. He pit from the 3rd lane, cut across the track right in front of Casey Mears, who was going probably 80 miles per hour faster, if not more. So pretty wild decision there from Denny Hamlin. That's not the move a champion makes. We almost had a repeat of Ty Dillon. Oh, it was Cole Custer. All right. I thought it may have been a Ford. I wasn't sure who it was though. So we have an update from Christian on his girlfriend's account. Thank you, Stacy. Able to, but yeah, barely surviving. I bet Cole Custer. I bet there's a bite taken out of his seat from how hard he puckered. But we'll continue on lap 52, our first big one of the race, if you can call it that. Let's see if we can get a replay of that. On NASCAR's main page, they don't have a replay of the big one. Let me go up on Xfinity's page. I'm going to try to get you guys this replay. All right. We do have a somewhat of a replay. Not great. So it started at the front of the pack. AJ Allmendinger taking a hard hit, a very hard hit, and going around, and multiple cars included, but most notably, look back here towards the back of the back of the wreck. You'll see Austin Cindric come down the track. He could have hit the brakes, but he didn't. He comes down the track and takes out Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott receiving day-ending damage. And I believe at least 7 cars were DNF from this wreck alone. So it was a very impactful wreck, but especially for Chase Elliott, who's definitely in a win-and-you're-in situation as of right now. He currently scored 62 points below the cut line. We'll take a look at that later. So that was our first major moment of the race. And then let's go ahead and look at our stage 2 results. That did set up a small dash to the finish. Stage 1. Ty Gibbs taking stage 1. Tyler Reddick second. Third, John Hunter Nemechek. So 3 Toyotas in a row. Ryan Blaney fourth. Very important for him to get the stage points. Bubba Wallace fifth. Sixth, Joey Logano. Also very important for him to get stage points. Zane Smith seventh. Eighth, Michael McDowell. Ninth, Carson Hocevar. And Christopher Bell also receiving a point. So pretty important there. And just missing out on stage points, William Byron, who really needed them, and Kyle Larson, who may also need them. So just missing out on stage points. Let's look back through our field. Yeah, at the end, Chase Elliott already in last place. So terrible day in points for Chase Elliott. And on lap 142, Riley... Oh, no, we're not that far forward yet. On lap 112. So they run clean through the start of stage 2. They get to green flag pit stops. On lap 112, SVG spins coming to pit road. So let's see if we can find the replay of that. They took down the replay of the big one. Oh, here we go. We may actually have this replay. So this was of the big one we just talked about. Allmendinger hard in the wall there. Further back, once they look back here in this replay, you'll see, yeah, Joey Logano barely surviving. Could have been a day ender. There's Elliott. And Cindric just comes down the track. Takes him out. Let's go ahead and look at our next incident. This was something to think about. Joey Logano reporting a gear oil temperature issue. His teammate Barry had a failure. So that we were monitoring that throughout the race, but it didn't become an issue. But SVG here on lap 112, sliding into the pits, getting into the back of Bell, but flush. So it didn't actually end up upsetting the car. But he also gets into Byron there. So that's a close call for 2 playoff drivers. And SVG ends up getting it stuck in the grass. There was a rain system that went through Talladega last night. Pretty heavy rain. So no doubt the grass was wet, the infield was wet. So that's probably why he couldn't get it out on his own. But on top of that, SVG blamed the rain from the seams in the track for causing him to spin. But this is pretty notable. He's the only guy that did spin. So, you know, seems like a skill issue. And then we have our stage 2 results. Let's go ahead and take a look at those. Chase Briscoe winning stage 2. Kyle Larson second. Third, Carson Hocevar. Fourth, William Byron. Fifth, Christopher Bell. Sixth, Ty Gibbs. Seventh, Todd Gilliland. Eighth, Ryan Blaney. Ninth, John Hunter Nemechek. And 10th, Alex Bowman. Missing out on stage points. Pretty notable. Joey Logano. That's huge. Denny Hamlin doesn't need them. He was locked in. And no one else notable behind. Chase Elliott obviously still dead last because he was out of the race. But receiving stage points, you know, important for Briscoe there, Larson, Byron, Bell, Blaney, all very important. They receive stage points. And then on lap 142, Riley Herbst has his mechanical issue. It ends his day. Pretty upsetting for Riley Herbst, as this was probably one of his best runs of the year. It seems like anytime he actually has a good run going, something bad happens. And I called it. I thought maybe he would wreck, but mechanical issue took him out anyway. So disappointing finish all the same. And then on lap 158, Alex Bowman had an engine issue reported. He ended up going over a lap down. I don't know where he ends up finishing in stage 3, but we'll take a look at that in a second. But he's able to keep it on track. He doesn't bring out a caution. And on lap 166, Cody Ware spins in his own oil. So here we go. He had already blown his motor. He already made his way onto the apron, but he ends up spinning in his own oil. So this causes a caution. And this sets up a shorter run to the finish. No one had pit yet under green. So everyone was able to come down and get fuel, make their service, and hopefully get enough fuel to make it to the end. I did say, even though mathematically they should make it to the end after that caution, certain teams may not take a full fuel load to try to, gain time on pit road. And that will come into play here. On lap 167, so the next lap after this caution comes out, Denny Hamlin reports a stuck throttle. He ends up losing a lap repairing this, and that pretty much took him out of contention. He had been running pretty well at certain points throughout the day. And then we restart. They're running pretty close. It's really good racing. And then on lap 187, I had called it several laps before that Byron would possibly do this. Byron ends up spinning Buescher. Not really his fault. It wasn't a bad push. Not a bad part of the track to make the push. It's really just blamed on that Chevy nose. It was really clear that most of the Chevys cannot push with this nose, not consistently. They can have little bumps, but they can't shove for extended periods of time. The Chevys have the most pointed nose out of the three of the manufacturers. The Fords having the flattest, the Camrys being the second flattest nose, and then the Camaros having a ridiculous point on the front. Not even sure why NASCAR allows that, knowing these guys are going to push each week. But the rumor is Chevy's going to change that next year. We'll talk about that later. And that sets up an overtime finish, with Byron restarting P1 and Larson restarting P2. On lap 193, last lap of the race, Larson ends up running out of fuel. And then coming to the checkered flag, William Byron ends up spinning from, I believe, third in the inside line. Briscoe ends up winning the race. Congrats to Chase Briscoe and all the Briscoe fans. So let's get into our race results, and we'll talk about the implications of this. And maybe we can get some of your calls in here pretty soon. So if you guys would like to call in here in a bit, we're not quite ready yet, but in a second, that number on screen, you guys are able to call that number, and we can get you here live on air. And you can share your thoughts. We'll try to keep it to, 3 to 5 minutes at max. That way we can get through as many calls as we can and wrap this up, because I would like to spend a little bit of time with my wife, even though she probably wouldn't agree. But I feel like I'm being listened to. Let's go ahead and look at our race results. Why did it go away? Close that. There we go. There's our race results. Chase Briscoe taking the win. Todd Gilliland second. Ty Gibbs third, getting a really good push to the back of Chase Briscoe to secure that win. Bubba Wallace looked like he had a really good shot to win this race. He's a decent plate racer. It would have been pretty cool for him to win at what could be considered his home track, a Mobile, Alabama native. Just missing out on the win. Chase Briscoe made a good move to dive to the inside and ended up taking the win over his pseudo teammate. In fifth, Cole Custer. Sixth, Carson Hocevar. Seventh, Tyler Reddick. Eighth, Christopher Bell. Ninth, Zane Smith. 10th, Brad Keselowski. 11th, Shane Van Gisbergen. 12th, Daniel Suarez. 13th, Ross Chastain. 14th, John Hunter Nemechek. 15th, Ryan Preece. 16th, Joey Logano. 17th, Michael McDowell, our pole sitter. 18th, Casey Mears, good finish for Casey. 19th, Kyle Busch. 20th, Ty Dillon. 21st, Anthony Alfredo. 22nd, Austin Hill. Could have been a dark horse to win. Coming to the closing laps, he was only a few lanes back in that outside line. 23rd, Ryan Blaney, not the finish he needed. 24th, Denny Hamlin. 25th, William Byron, getting spun in the tri-oval. 26th, Kyle Larson. 27th, Austin Dillon. 28th, BJ McLeod. 29th, Alex Bowman. 30th, Chris Buescher. 31st, Cody Ware. 32nd, Riley Herbst. 33rd, Josh Berry. 34th, Austin Cindric. 35th, Eric Jones. 36th, Noah Gragson. 37th, AJ Allmendinger, who took a pretty hard shot, ended up laying next to his car for a while because the wind was knocked out of it. Thankfully, AJ seems okay. 38th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. And 39th, Justin Haley. Let's scroll down a little bit more. 40th, Chase Elliott. Very disappointing day for Chase Elliott. See several of these guys out of the race at the same time. Right behind them, Eric Jones and Austin Cindric. So several guys that received damage in that early wreck, all taken out of the race. Pretty disappointing. Very disappointing day for the guys at Hendrick. Definitely not the day the Penske guys wanted. But congratulations to Chase Briscoe. I like to put this out there into the universe. Chase Briscoe, one of his best tracks, one of his hallmark tracks, is Phoenix. I've said it for weeks. If Chase Briscoe somehow found his way into the Final Four, watch out. He definitely has a shot. And now that it looks like the Penske guys, without a win, they're not going to make it either. So it's going to come down to probably 3 JGR cars and maybe Kyle Larson. So it's a pretty stacked field for JGR. This is their year to win. And Chase Briscoe, he may have a pretty good shot at it. He understands that track pretty well, and he's in decent equipment. And overall in our points battle, I believe he would be second in our Winston Cup points. It would be interesting to see what the full season points look like under this current format, because coming into this race, William Byron and Kyle Larson were tied. Now, after this race, it might be that Byron just edged ahead, or it could be that Bell caught up. So if we can find the full season points under the current format, we'll look at that. But let's go ahead and see if we can find the Winston Cup points and see who our full season winner is here, or full season leader, I should say. Here we go. It's already up. I love this account. Good follow on Twitter if you guys are interested. Just search Winston Cup points. You'll find the account. First, we have Christopher Bell. This is what we would have under the old system. They're saying we can't have full season points because the battle won't be interesting. Would you look at this? These guys fell off pretty hard. Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott. They were closer and still mathematically in, and they technically still are. Because I believe the maximum points you can get under this Latford system is 175. So technically these guys are still in it, but really it's a 2-car battle for the most part. Chase Briscoe cutting a pretty sizable chunk out. Now only 17 below. That's still a really, really close race. That's what we would have under the old Winston Cup format. So pretty crazy to see. Since we're already here, we're going to go ahead and look at this just because I think it's pretty neat to look at. These are our potential champions had we have stayed under Winston Cup the whole time. So Gordon would have finished with 7, last in 2014. Harvick with 4. Kyle Busch with 2. Kyle Larson would still have 1. Chase Elliott would still have 1, just not in the seasons they actually won. William Byron would have 1, and Bell would have 1 as well. Pretty interesting. Truex would also have a championship. Carl Edwards would have a championship. Jimmy Johnson would peak at 3. And this, you can't accurately say this. It's not like the races would have finished the exact same way. But if they had, for some reason, this is how the standings would have played out. And you can actually see the point differential here, too. So last year would have been decided by 5 points. 2023, 17 points. 2021, 24 points. I mean, these are close battles. They robbed us in 2006 of a 1-point win. Crazy. Gordon in '07 would have had a 393-point advantage. What a monster season that was. And then not to win the championship. Pretty wild. Pretty wild. But that's a look at our fantasy points. See if we can find a picture of our NASCAR playoff points here. Well, this is a janky picture. Let's see. This is a good one, right? Chase Briscoe advancing with the tiebreaker over Denny Hamlin, it looks like. Denny Hamlin second, also advancing. The third JGR car, pretty close to being safe. Christopher Bell, 37 above the cut line. Kyle Larson, even with falling back to 6th position, 36 above the cut line. William Byron dying at the very end of the race. He ends up 36 below the cut line, pretty much in a win and you're in. All the guys below the cut line are pretty much in a win and you're in. Unless one of these guys above the cut line has, a day-ending event early in the race. Joey 38 below, Ryan Blaney 47 below, and Chase Elliott 100% in a win and you're in situation, 62 points below the cut line. So that's a look at our playoff picture. Let me go ahead and get the there we go. Let's go ahead and get the Google Voice pulled open. Drag that over there. If you guys would like to call in, give me one moment. I need to put my headset on. If you guys would like to call in at that number on screen. Oh, we already have one call. Welcome, Daytona. You are live. Give me just a moment to get this set up. And then the floor will be yours for, I guess, at least 5 minutes if you want a full 5.
Okay.
Okay, we have you
Disco
live.
Disco Briscoe.
Disco Briscoe.
Disco for Briscoe.
So
I have Briscoe winning the championship at this point.
You have okay, that's one of my questions out of the way. So you have Briscoe winning the championship. So you think he's just going to take it at Phoenix?
It depends on how everything else goes, because it depends on who's locked in, or who even gets in the 4.
If it's 3 JGR cars, that would be a wild battle, because it would be, difficult, because, if it's someone that's not your teammate, you don't really have a problem moving them out of the way. But if it's your teammate, how far are you willing to go?
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing is, even if it's not your teammate, you still, you can still muscle them, but it's just they're gonna come with more repercussions in the end.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna be mad because, well, you moved them, you wrecked them if you did, and that Martinsville too. It doesn't really matter where it is in these last 2 races. It just matters what happens.
Yeah, it could be interesting. And imagine the worst case scenario where maybe Denny costs Chase, tries to maybe do a bump and run, takes them both out like he did with Bubba Wallace. And, the 4th driver, whether it's Kyle Larson or someone else, ends up taking the championship. I mean, imagine having 3 cars in the final 4 and not winning. That would be the ultimate choke.
Yeah, and I sort of feel like Larson has a good chance of winning it, or of even getting in and then of winning it, because he's really good at Phoenix. I mean, Briscoe is too, and JGR just generally is good at Phoenix. But Larson is most likely good at Phoenix. He's most of the time he is.
Yeah, considering they're so close in points between Briscoe and Bell, I wouldn't mind seeing either of those guys win because, they're leading the Winston Cup full season points. So in my mind, they're the most deserving out of any of these guys. So I'd like to see one of those two win.
So Todd Gilliland and Zane Smith, just going completely off track from what you asked.
That's all right.
Todd Gilliland and Zane Smith, that was a huge day for them. Todd Gilliland in second. That's huge for him, and Zane in ninth.
For sure. Yeah, especially after flipping just a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good bounce back for Zane Smith.
Yeah, and I feel like they just have a really good super speedway package. It's just that team they've always been good at super speedways, but I feel like it was particularly good today.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely, you have a point there. They were good with McDowell, able to win a 500. So they're definitely pretty solid on the plate tracks. And it seems like Ford just, the flatter nose, but also it just seems like maybe their engine package is maybe a little better because they seem to perform pretty well at the plate tracks.
Yeah, and I'm just going to change subject again here.
That's all right.
So this is just the 24. I'm just debating if that rack was intentional or not because it didn't look it, but it felt like it was.
I just think it was a bad, just the bad shape of the nose being pointier. Because going back and looking at the replay, it wasn't really an off-center hit. It's not like he hit him moving around. Like it didn't seem dirty in any way. And it's towards the end of the race, so you can't even fault him for pushing there. It just seemed like, just the way that Chevy nose is off-center, it has a point to it that if you don't hit them perfectly, they get swirly. But the Chevys in general, they didn't look like they could push, and it didn't look like they could take a push. Byron ends up spinning, and Larson, he got shoved down to that inside line and then eventually ran out of fuel. But, they just didn't have great stability, didn't look like.
Well, Hocevar, I think on that replay, he just got in the back of him. He had a really good run, Hocevar, out of two, I forgot what it was. But anyways, he had a really good run out, and he just got to him, and I think that got him a little loose, and then then he rammed in the back of him. But
yeah, that's exactly what happened.
He didn't really. Yeah, like you said, he didn't really wiggle that bad.
Yeah, it was definitely disappointing for Buescher, and that was another Ford that could have helped out at the end. But if they don't wreck there, there's a possibility they make it to the end, or at least to the last lap clean. We'll never know, but it definitely could have been a much different race.
Yeah, I mean, and circling back to the beginning. So Allmendinger, that hit was tremendous, and then just like it was like, and then there was another hit. I forget who it was, but I can't think of who it was. But they just rammed right into the side of that other car.
Yeah, can't recall immediately. I have to go back and look at the replays. Yeah, we had several hard hits today, and we had a really hard hit in the Xfinity race with William Sawalage. Ended up in the hospital. So I haven't heard any update on his condition, but I hope he's doing all right.
The colleague said that he's out of the hospital.
That's good. And any other thoughts on today's race before we at least wrap up this call?
I got to rate it a 9.5.
9.5 out of 10?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's a really high ranking. And good to hear from you. If we have time later and you have something else to share, I wouldn't mind if you called back. Because I know sometimes you do have several things to talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Thank you. As always, I appreciate the call.
Yep. Thank you.
Bye. All right. If someone else would like to call in, that was a great call from Daytona there. You'll see him very frequently in our chat, very active in the community. It's a pretty wild race. We covered a lot of ground in that one call, but if you guys want to rehash the same topic, if you have a different opinion on it, feel free to call in at the number on screen and share your thoughts. A couple other things I would like to talk about while we're waiting on a call is we do have to talk about this lawsuit. So the lawsuit between 2311 Front Row Motorsports and NASCAR. Yeah, definitely Daytona. He said it's nice not to just talk in chat. Yeah, it's good to hear from you guys. Justin wants something to listen to. Yeah, if anyone wants to call in, you can share, as much or as little as you would like. It doesn't have to be a long call. You can just share 30 seconds. You can just give a quick review of the race, who you think is going to win the playoffs, whatever you'd like to talk about. But this lawsuit between 2311 Front Row Motorsports and NASCAR, NASCAR wants to settle. So looking forward to next year, before they wanted to settle this lawsuit, NASCAR said they intended to sell off the other charters. Now it looks like they're trying to pull back on that and keep 2311 and Front Row in the sport, which I think is the right decision. But this puts a few guys in jeopardy. Ryan Preece is that guy. So Ryan Preece is racing on a rented charter or a loaned charter from Rick Ware Racing, who I believe sold that exact same charter to Legacy. So Preece may either be in an open car, or he may have to find another ride, or maybe they can secure another charter somehow, but it's looking very unsure with what's going on with that lawsuit. And it'll be interesting to see if the other teams are impacted by how they settled this lawsuit. What is 2311 and Front Row going to try to demand in this settlement? Or are they just going to settle and sign the deal they initially refused to sign? That's something to keep an eye on as we go into this offseason, because it's been the talk of the majority of this season, is this lawsuit ongoing. One of the things that came out from this lawsuit, this is what I find really interesting. NASCAR has had internal discussions about what they would do if a competitor actually arose in the United States, a stock car racing competitor. And the theories they floated is it could just be a summer league like SRX, which means they were worried about SRX. An off-season, a competitor, November to January, maybe they were thinking some of the teams would run their own cars on different tracks. They were worried about that. And then they were also worried about the possibility of the Saudis, coming in and starting like a live golf situation and starting their own league. So, and the Saudis have a ton of money. They definitely could do that, could make that happen. But the point that they were worried about and stressing is their eyes were open, they said, from how the PGA Tour live golf thing went down. They said there's no loyalty anymore. People are just going after money, which is true. And when the Saudis throw millions or billions at you, it's hard to ignore that. It's hard to resist that. And so NASCAR, I guess, was pretty concerned about it. I'm not sure how that would go over or what that league would look like. But NASCAR had internal debates on what they would do. And so one of their plans was to try to diversify their income streams. So they didn't just want all the money from the broadcast schedule. They're saying we get our lion's share from the broadcast. We need to look at other revenue venues. So will that somehow impact this lawsuit? And could we see another league form? It's a possibility SRX comes back next year, but we haven't seen any movement on that in several months. But maybe one day, could we see a Saudi league? Could we see some of the teams break off and run in the offseason? These are things that NASCAR floated the possibility of. And how would NASCAR counter that? Would they run midweek races to try to counter a summer league? would they run in the off-season exhibition races to try to counter an off-season league? So NASCAR has some decisions to make, and maybe they'll never be put in that situation. I'll have to keep an eye on it. All right, let's go ahead and take another call.
Call from
Daytona.
Daytona's calling back. Welcome back, Daytona.
Hello. So, back to what you were saying. The fact that they have to consider another league forming is just astonishing, because they're literally considering that people are going to leave that sport and go to another one. If they're considering that, then they should be considering changing stuff in the league instead of not doing anything, basically.
Definitely considering changing things that fans request, maybe full season points, or maybe higher horsepower, maybe getting rid of the next gen car, and maybe demanding more out of the broadcast partners. Fox and NBC have been slacking lately. TNT's coverage, I enjoyed it, but other people didn't. But the best partner this year is Prime. So maybe we push for the other partners to take the broadcast as seriously as Prime did. But you're right, something may need to change. And, if NASCAR is worried about some small summer league upsetting their revenue stream, maybe there's bigger issues at hand.
Yeah, and if they switch to Prime, it'll be sort of an F1 Apple situation, because barely anybody pays for that stuff anymore. Nobody wants to pay for it. So they're not just gonna sit there and be like, oh, that's fine.
Yeah. I would say more people have Prime because, a lot of people just subscribe to Prime anyway, just for Amazon shopping. But I feel like if Prime went full season, I feel like a good middle of the road thing would be to have most of the races still on broadcast, but have maybe a separate stream going, kind of like the Manning cast situation on Prime. That way you can watch the Prime if you want, or you can stick to the broadcast if you prefer that. That way people that still only watch on TV still have that option. Because I watched today's race on an antenna. I think all the races should be on network TV. That way people can get it for free, instead of having to pay to watch on USA or at Fox Sports 1. But that's just my 2 cents on that.
I mean, yeah. The thing is, they're not going to do that. They're trying to maximize the revenue. That's all they're trying to do. So they aren't going to do all of this stuff. If they don't have to, they're not going to. And that's for sure.
Yeah, that's for sure. They milk the sponsorships and anything they can do to increase revenue. They even got a sponsor. I don't know if you saw the Holler stream when they did the Sonoma to Charlotte or Sonoma to Dover, and they did the Charlotte to Las Vegas. They got a sponsor for this last one. Yeah, so they're doing everything they can to bring in money. Can't blame them. They're a company first, but we may want to consider maybe we don't have things so bad with the France family in charge, because if you look at the WWE, it's not a complete one-to-one comparison. They were owned by one family, one guy, for so many years, and then they sold out to TKO. They had a merger, bought out by a holding company, and now they're making a lot of changes that aren't fan friendly, and they're milking the sport even harder than it was. So if another group was to come out and try to buy out the France family, could things get worse? Should we be a little more thankful?
I mean, yeah, definitely. But the concerning thing is, like I said earlier, this is just circling back, but them assuming that, them assuming that they will need to take steps. And we've seen those steps. Bob Proctor's posted those steps on Twitter. Considering that they need to use these steps in place is just a little concerning.
Yeah, for sure.
like them even having to think about that is just concerning because it's it's like they see the fans. If they're considering that, they see the fans.
Yeah,
And
I would rather them make plans though instead of, just hoping it doesn't happen, because it seems like the Saudis are expanding as fast as they can in every field. So having a game plan isn't the worst idea, but if this was the NASCAR that was around in the early 2000s, they wouldn't even be concerned because the sport was huge and was very healthy. So at the state it's in right now, I guess they probably do need to be concerned, especially with how close F1's been getting in the ratings. Although I don't think they're going to get very high next year on the Apple TV platform.
I mean, yeah, but it's just concerning. Like, I'm circling back. I keep circling back, but the fact that they have to consider that as an option, and no other sport is has another plan to consider. Oh, well, if another like when IndyCar split, they didn't do anything different. They just let the drivers leave and do whatever they wanted. But
yeah, that was a rough situation between kart and Indy. And that's exactly what NASCAR was, prepared to do if the teams didn't sign the deal. They already had plans in place just in case the teams actually split and tried to make their own league. So, they've had they had that as a possibility going into this year. It was pretty wild plans they had cooked up.
Yeah. And then it doesn't even, like, okay, we're just going to change topics completely. 750 horsepower package. That is going to be good.
Maybe. It's not going to be a huge change, only for the shorter tracks and the road courses. I'm not sure it's enough. I don't know if we're actually going to see much of a difference.
Probably not, because it's really just the car that is producing the racing, how it is going. But if this works out, I would love to see them expand to all the tracks.
Yeah, I wish it was all the tracks.
Yeah, that would be really good.
Yeah, Double A said at least it's in the right direction. Yeah, that's right. It's a good change, and NASCAR's given us hope. They've hinted that maybe we could go to a different points format. Maybe we could go to full season points. And then now, they announced, the horsepower package change for some of the tracks next year. So that's pretty big news, pretty exciting. And it gives me hope, and hope is a dangerous thing because hope can hurt a man, especially when things don't turn out how you're hoping. But hopefully, we're talking a lot about hope right now. Hopefully they continue to listen to the fans and make the changes that made the sport popular in the first place.
Circling hope. So the thing is, sorry, I'm like blanking here.
That's all right.
I just completely forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, back to hope. So, Bob Cockris has said, well, the playoff committee, they're talking about it. It's the broadcast partners that are saying, we can't change the playoffs because we want them to be more exciting. Because the playoff committee is all for it. But the broadcast partners do not want that.
Yeah, that's right. The rumor is NBC doesn't want it to change because they're the ones that air the cutoff races, and so they don't want the championship to get wrapped up 4 races early, 5 races early, and then people to tune out the rest of the season because they would feel like they're shorted on their value, their monetary gain. But they're looking at short-term results. If the full season format actually brings back some legitimacy, actually brings back some seriousness to the sport. Ratings might go up, maybe not a ton, but maybe enough to offset the difference of if people do tune out for the last couple races because the championship's decided. So they need to look maybe at long term, what a full points season could do. The rumor is that we could go to a 32-6, or 32-4, 32 race regular season, and a 4 race final round. That would be better than what we have, but it's not perfect.
I mean, it's for the playoffs. It depends on how they run it. It depends on how they run all of this, because how they set up the season and everything, it changes everything. Where they're running, whatever, it depends.
Yeah, it's it definitely changes the outlook on the race. People run differently because of the stages and because of the points. Logano, especially, years he's won the championship. I believe the last time he won the championship from 14th in the points. If he was 14th in the points in the Winston Cup format or a full season points format, he wouldn't be making crazy Hail Mary moves to advance, because that wouldn't exist anymore. So people maybe have a point there, but I just think it hurts the season long. It hurts the legitimacy of it. People look at some of these playoff championships as Mickey Mouse. One of the worst offenders is Kyle Busch's championship, where he broke his leg and missed half the season and then came back and won the championship. How do you miss half the races and win the championship? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that was holding him up is that single win. That single win got him through every round. He won a race every round, a single race every single round. And it's just and I'm just going to circle back to this race. So, Jack Bluff just said something that there was 78 lead changes. And then the last couple of years, there were 88 in April 2010, April 2011 was 88, and October 87. It's trailing them by a lot. It really does it depends on how everything goes in one of these races, like a Superspeedway race. I just completely changed topics. Anyways, it depends on how everything goes in a Superspeedway race for, how it runs, how stuff happens.
Yeah, it's definitely impacts the full season. Any final thoughts before we wrap this call up? We'll give someone else a chance to call in. If not, I think we'll wrap up the stream here pretty soon. We're closing in on an hour. So any final thoughts for this week?
Not really.
Not really? Well, we covered quite a lot of ground. Thank you, as always, for calling. You have plenty of topics to talk about. So you do a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Have a good one.
You too.
All right. If anyone else would like to call in at that 615 number on your screen. If not, we'll wrap things up here shortly. We are closing in on an hour. One more thing I would like to touch on. We mentioned it briefly on the call at Daytona. During the offseason, when the teams hadn't signed the charter agreement yet, NASCAR was considering the possibility of the teams breaking off and running their own league. And so what NASCAR would have done in this situation is, if any of the teams had actually signed on, they would fill the field first. Second, they would sell off the charters to new teams. They would create new teams. So firstly, they would try to sell to teams in the Xfinity Series and teams in the Truck Series, and then go to outside investors. possibly even start some of their own teams. So the majority of the field, they would aim to be next-gen cars. But if they couldn't fill the field with next-gen cars, they would bring in Xfinity cars. And if they couldn't fill the field with Xfinity cars, they would bring in trucks and ARCA cars. And then they would have balance of powered the cars like they do at IMSA. So they already planned in the offseason to do wind tunnel testing to actually decide how much to change the balance of power in each of the cars, maybe affect the weight, affect the horsepower. And they were going to have multi-class racing in NASCAR. That was the plan for if we had gone on strike this season. So that's pretty wild. That's a little glimpse at the alternate history that this season could have had. If the teams had gone on strike, if they had held hands with Denny Hamlin, just said, no, we're not going, we're not signing that charter agreement, we would have had multi-class racing in NASCAR, which has always been a fantasy of mine. I think we should see it at one point. It's got to happen. Take a look at your comments here, guys. Michael Turner said Elliott's only option is to win. He's 62 points behind. Herb said an engine failure. Bowman 29th. Bad day for Hendrick. It definitely was a bad day. And Christian said Mir's got a top 20. Yeah, that's really impressive for Mears. Justin 87 said, call in, but you're destroying your rock bed. Yeah, that's probably pretty loud. Michael said Byron 25th, Larson 26th, Bowman 29th, and Elliott 40th. Yeah, it was a rough day. JT 513 said that finish was good. Gus was right. JG is a 7-time champion. I don't care what anyone says. Hey, I'm right there with you, buddy. Mr. Spaceman said, I told you John Taylor was going to have the game of his career. You did say that. You did say that. You're a ball knower. Michael Turner, Larson won it in 21. Larson is 21. Champion Kenseth would have won it in 2006. He won it under the Winston Cup format. Yeah. I guess that would have been his second, right? I think he also got the one in 03 without winning a race, if I remember correctly. Christian said, repeated the big three, and we could have all JGR plus either Penske or Hendrick, and Logano could be the one to repeat of 2018 when he won at Martinsville. He could. Logano's really good there. Blaney's pretty good at Martinsville as well, so look out for either of them. Chase has run pretty well at Martinsville before, so maybe he pulls something out. And Byron is almost in a win-and-you're-in situation. Not quite, but pretty much. Especially if Larson and Bell both have decent days. So really anyone below the cut line, they're looking at needing to win. Or a lot of luck. And Christian said, we need an off-season series middle November through middle February. It sucks waiting for NASCAR to come back. I agree, but thankfully we do have one of the shortest off-seasons of any sport. And we kind of have like races like the Snowball Derby and, plenty of dirt racing and the Rolex 24. We have racing, not NASCAR, but we do have racing. But it would be nice to have even more. Maybe some NASCAR exhibitions like they used to do. Michael Turner thinks full season points would help the sport a lot. I definitely agree. Michael said he confirmed Kyle Busch broke leg and foot in 2015 and missed 11 races. Michael's, he's the stat guy. He knows stuff. Regine Huddleston says Briscoe, Bell, Hamlin, Byron, Final Four. And they said, I felt it was going to go in overtime, and it did. Well, it did go in overtime. You're correct there. Byron is a wild choice. Byron is definitely a wild choice there. So you're thinking Byron either wins next week or Larson has such a bad race that maybe Byron wins 2 stages and then finishes second and Larson finishes 35th. Maybe that would work out. Yeah, if you want to make a final thought in chat, that's fine. I think we have one last thing to talk about. If anyone still wants to call in, you can go for it. But if not, if no one else wants to call in, we'll wrap things up in just a moment. The one last thing I would like to consider is the Chevy body. So the rumor is Chevy is going to introduce a new body over the offseason. The rumor was they were going to unveil it at the Roval. Well, obviously that didn't happen. So maybe they're waiting till offseason, which is a pretty good time to announce things, keeps the hype going. It doesn't distract from the current year. The rumor is that the Camaro is going to stay the Zombie Camaro because NASCAR's already approved that model. And I believe they may be able to run it for a few more years, at the least 2 more, I believe. But NASCAR's already approved that Camaro model. So the rumor is they're going to tweak it. And one of the tweaks is going to be a flatter front end on it. It's going to be mostly cosmetic, but a little body changes. But there's also been another rumor that it could be another vehicle. So what vehicle could that be? What vehicle would that be? I'm not sure. Some people have said the Blazer, but the Blazer is not a sedan. And they currently do not make a sedan. The Malibu's last model year was this year. They do not make the Impala. They do not make the Lumina. They do not make the Chevy Cruze. Nothing. None of those sedans. Chevy's done with sedans. So the last sedan-ish, which is not a sedan, the last car they have, I believe, it would be the Corvette. And I don't see them bringing the Corvette into NASCAR. I also don't see them switching away from Chevy because they want Chevy to be more of the affordable performance brand. So it looks like we're going to have a Ghost Camaro. Daytona said he hopes Byron is not in. Interesting. Double A said Byron could 100% win Martinsville. It's going to be close because if there's a playoff driver behind another playoff driver who's below the cut line, you could see a last lap murder because bump and runs do not work in this car. You have to hit the person full speed. And like Denny, you might end up wrecking yourself or at least taking yourself out of contention. But pretty wild stuff. Daytona says it's going to be modeled off a Camaro. That's what I personally believe. But there have been rumors otherwise. I hope it's not a Blazer. That would be ridiculous. It wouldn't even fit the body style. But regardless, what would be even cooler, and this probably isn't going to happen, maybe not this year, maybe in a couple years, maybe they announce the 7th gen Camaro. Bring the Camaro back because Chevy is investing more money into their internal combustion engine program. They've rerouted a lot of that money from their EV division because their EVs are not selling well. Because if people are going to buy an EV, they want, well, number one, if they're going to buy a car, they want a cheap car. The majority of people do. One that's affordable, not cheaply made, affordable. There's a difference. And EVs are not compatible with people that live in rural areas. People live in the middle of nowhere, the Midwest. There's not a lot of EV chargers between points. It's a pain to drive long distance in an EV. I've tried it. And a lot of the people that are eco-conscious, they're going to go with a car like Lucid, or they're going to go with a car like Tesla. They're not going to jump for a Chevy immediately. They might go with a Mach-E, but even that, is a stretch. The rumor for a while was that the Camaro was going to come back as an EV. If that happens, I'm going to jump off a bridge. I threatened Chevy. I said, if you guys do it, I sent them a picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. I said, I'm going to jump. So if they do not come out with a Chevy EV, you can thank me. I still might do it, but I hope it's the Camaro. Best case scenario, they announce the 7th gen Camaro. I don't think that's happening, not at least this year or next year, but maybe eventually. Because I would love to see that iconic nameplate come back. And right now, it's pretty sad. The only real muscle car we have is the Ford Mustang. The Charger is getting a 6-cylinder version. I'm not sure if they're getting a V8, but they did say they were going to put a V6 in one. But right now, the only Charger you can get is electric. So there's only one real muscle car left, And that's a shame. It's a shame for American auto companies. And it's a shame that American auto companies aren't making sedans. But that's our fault for not buying more sedans. We need to stop with this SUV garbage. They're ugly. It's pathetic. Anyway, Daytona says not excited for electric NASCAR. Yeah, I don't know. They say they're going to do a demo series. But I'm not sure if they're ever going to actually get around to it because it's going to take a lot of money to develop that. Maybe each manufacturer funds 2 teams. I don't know. It would be rough, especially because they can't go long distance. You know, you're not going to have a 500-mile race. And I don't know if people are going to show up to see NASCAR racing where there's not that bone-rattling, cellular reorganizing, heartbeat reprogramming, rattle of the V8 engines. It's a key element to attending a NASCAR race is that experience of being hit in the face with 670 horsepower and above. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. They'll do whatever's best for them monetarily. But I think that'll do it for us, guys. Thank you, Daytona, for the calls. We probably won't be live next week for the Xfinity and Cup race. Maybe after the Cup race we can go live, but it won't be in this format. I'll be on the go. I'll be traveling. We will probably be live for the truck race on Friday. So maybe look for us then. But for Saturday, Sunday, I probably won't be around much. So I hate to miss Martinsville, but we will be back in full swing for Phoenix. So looking forward to Phoenix. Going to be an exciting time. Hopefully it's going to be a good championship race, and hopefully it's the last playoff championship we have. But thank you guys for being here. Thank you, Michael. Yeah, so we do need more sedans. Thank you, Daytona. Double A. Thank you, Double A, for the super chat. Thank you, Justin87, for the super chat as well. Regine Huddleston, thank you for being here. Richard, good to see you here. Go Briscoe is what he said. Good to see you, Christian. Thank you, Stacy, for the use of your computer. You helped us get through this, Mr. Spaceman. Thank you for checking in with us. Gus was right. Good to see you, JT513. Denny Hamlin fan, good to see you throughout the day. King is dead. Thank you for the several super chats and super stickers. Very big supporter of the channel. Good to see you guys. Good to see you guys. Fun time. We had over 1,000 viewers in our post race, and we had a few thousand, I guess, throughout the run of the Cup race. I didn't actually see what the view count was on that, but I'm sure it was probably around 5 to 10,000. But pretty good for us. Been enjoyable. Might go live later. Not sure what we would play. Maybe a backroom style thing. Probably not some NASCAR 25. I really don't want to set up the PlayStation tonight. But if I don't see you guys tonight, maybe I will tomorrow. And I hope to see you guys whenever we go live again. So I hope you guys have a good one. Until then.